wildlife habitat. They don't have a passport. They go out to the ocean, then they come back to breed. Where's the royalty in discontinuing this?
A battle is being fought in rural Nova Scotia. A battle that has united First Nations people, commercial and recreational fishermen, environmentalists, scientists, and local residents in their opposition to an industrial energy project and its approval by the provincial government. Alton Natural Gas Storage, a subsidiary of billion-dollar Alberta-based giant Alta Gas, has been granted regulatory approval to construct a number of underground natural gas storage caverns near a small Colchester County community. Alton Gas claims that the project will help meet the demand for affordable natural gas year-round in Nova Scotia, but many Nova Scotians are determined that the project should not go ahead. Alton Gas proposes to construct the storage caverns by extracting water from the Shubenacadie River, pumping it to the cavern site, then piping it about 1 kilometer underground into the underlying salt formation. The water will dissolve salt to carve out the storage caverns, and the concentrated brine will then be pumped back to the river site, where it will be slowly released back into the Shubenacadie. The Shubenacadie flows from Grand Lake near Halifax to the Minas Basin at Maitland. The upper reaches are fresh, but near Stewiacke, the river becomes tidal, subject to the mighty tides of the Bay of Fundy. Alton Gas has already drilled access shafts for the first 3 proposed caverns, laid pipelines from the cavern site to the river site, and has nearly completed construction of a holding pond and infrastructure at the river site. Opponents of the project argue that no one knows how the release of brine will affect the river's fragile and productive ecosystem. Despite assurances from Alton Gas that the increased salinity in the river will not reach levels that will kill fish and invertebrates, many believe that these assurances are based on inadequate science.
What we do know about the Shubenacadie River, it's home to the last known spawning population of striped bass in the Bay of Fundy. The Shubenacadie River also is important for lots of other fish species, American eel, Gaspereau or alewife, and tomcod. They all use that system. We don't know anything about most of the other species in this system. We know tommycod move into the system and are there in the winter time, presumably to spawn in January. We know a lot of anecdotal information. We know a lot of First Nations knowledge on these species, but this information is not being taken into consideration. Alton Gas has paid for a number of pre-monitoring studies, let's say. All of that information is not readily available for independent review. There are people that are interested in looking at that information. If it survives the scrutiny of independent review, then maybe that's good. It would take some of the pressure off and reveal things that we don't know right now about that system. As far as striped bass general biology goes, we don't know a number of critical things that we should know about this population. We don't know the population size. We don't know the recruitment dynamics, that is the smaller fish and how they move on to successive life stages up to spawning adults. We don't know the natural mortality rate, and we don't know the recreational mortality rate, that is how many fish are taken out of the fishery each year. Without this information, this baseline information, it's really difficult to look at monitoring this species and any effects that Alton Gas may have on them.
The Bass Association looked at this and tried to find where if there was another case around the world where tidal river was used to dispose of the salt in these amounts, and we couldn't find one, and this is the first time it's been tried. We have no one knows what the effects will be.
When I first heard about salt brine, I went to the internet, and I went out and I saw in Europe, Australia, the work that they have done on salt discharge into waterways. Never have they ever done one in a tidal waterway, When you put it into a waterway, you want the waterway to go out all the time, not go out and then 6 hours later turn around and come back. I mean, give your head a shake. Essentially, we are a group of gillnet fishermen, 25 probably in our membership. On a good day, you might have 15 boats out. We fish for Gaspro, shad, and also some of our fishermen have eel licenses.
We're concerned that the site they chose for the pumping station, where they're going to mix the brine into the river, it was built on a floodplain, and within the last year, it's flooded 3 times.
They said, we've been looking at the tides, the science, the weather patterns, the currents, where the channels change for over 30 years, and we've determined that this is the safest place, or the most sensible place, that we can put this discharge to have the safe environment. Well, they put their buildings in, and within 6 months, they were flooded. They had to replace all their pumps.
If there is a flood there and all that brine at a high concentration of salt exit the system at once, it's unknown what the effects of that will be on the Shubenacadie River. That's going to be a very large amount of salt, very high concentration pushed into that system at once. If it's at a low tide cycle or a slack tide cycle, that could have dire consequences for the species that are in that area at that time.
We don't know how that salt will mix into the rest of the river water. We're not sure how that will impact different fish at different life cycles and other species that live in the river. These are all questions that we have that haven't been answered.
As far as we know, there's no study been done to see if the salt is actually going to flush out the river. If Alton Gas has done a study on it, and we've never seen or heard tell of it, who knows whether the salt will flush all the way out before the incoming tide comes in and pushes it all back up the river.
What their monitoring plan calls for is to have sensors, and they say in their plan that when the salt levels get above a point that it's lethal, they're going to start shutting it down to discharge. It's going to take an hour to shut it down. Well, who in their right mind, if you're going to develop a system to protect a river system, if you want to protect it, your monitors would tell you, you would monitor constantly, and as soon as it become within 5% or whatever of your lethal limit, you'd start shutting it down, not wait till it's over it and then start shutting it down and take an hour.
The Environment Minister hasn't given this enough thought. Department of Fisheries and Oceans doesn't seem to have much power unless something happens in the system. And by the time something happens in the system, it's going to be far too late.
The project's opponents also say that there has been a lack of meaningful consultation with local people.
Another issue we have with this project is the way that the environmental assessment and the community consultation specifically were conducted. We don't think that the people who should have had a say in this project did have a say, and that we're concerned that their comments and concerns were not taken very seriously in designing this project. That specifically relates especially to First Nations folks from Sipekne'katik and Millbrook First Nation. There are a lot of complicated reasons that consultation was not done in a really respectful and effective manner, so we think that the consultation process has been really insufficient in this case.
We started the process of trying to find out information to the point where our community decided to leave the Micmac Rights Initiative and the Assembly of Nova Scotia Chiefs process because of the fact that we felt we weren't being consulted properly. Alton Gas started around 2007. I was actually a band counselor at the time, but I've never heard of Alton Gas from 2007 until 2012 when I was elected in as chief. When I was elected in as chief, I started seeing paperwork, different little stuff on Alton Gas, and people been asking me about it. So we started looking into it, and we found out that they're planning on putting a salt caverns in. Our community wasn't aware of it. Apparently they did some kind of consultation. They made a phone call to our economic development officer, David Nevin. but he didn't look at it as consultation. He was just looking at maybe possible jobs in the area.
To this moment, we have not received any consultation with Fisheries Environment or anybody in government. DFO, I mean, they come to a striped bass meeting, you know, that we attend, and they would make some little presentations there, but absolutely no consultation with the people that are, especially us, our people, our fishermen, that we have commercial licenses for these rivers, this Shubenacadie River system. We've been fishing here for years and years, and not to at least to give us the courtesy of asking for what knowledge we might have in regards to the risk to this system, this ecosystem, is just unbelievable. Yeah, we feel insulted.
Bass Association has tried to meet on several occasions, tried to meet with Alton Gas as a group, and they have refused to do so. They would meet on one-to-one basis, but to talk publicly to a group about and answer questions, they've continually refused.
We decided to have a referendum in our communities regarding the Alton Gas because we didn't understand all the signs, but we were trying to get it to our community would know what's going on. That's when the province decided that we don't have no veto power, and that they decided that they were going to go forward with Alton Gas anyway.
The Ecology Action Centre, as well as 5 other organizations in the province, we appealed the decision to approve the Alton Gas project to go forward. And each group had different reasons for doing so, but the reasons that we put forward in our appeal were largely based on the lack of clear science, as I mentioned, around the impacts on different fish species, different other species that use the river, as well as the consultation process that was used to approve this project.
The 1752 treaty is what Sipekne'katik feels that by putting that brine in the river from Alton Gas, it's going to affect our treaty rights to fish, because it's going to hinder. If you don't have no fish in the river, it's going to hinder our fishing, and that's what part of the treaty says, not to hinder our fishing.
We heard about this submerged crown lease. We don't know what a submerged crown lease is. We sent an email to DNR and asked them would they give us some detail on submerged crown leases. They basically said nothing, but they did say if we did have the information, you would have to get it for the Freedom of Information Act, and it would be redacted. Oh, great news. Here we are with a commercial fishery, had here for years, one of our best drifts on that marsh. They're going to do something to give somebody rights over our right to drift through there or fish it, and they won't even tell us what they are. We still don't know. We know at some point in time we're going to probably be challenged while trying to perform our traditional fishery. That's where we stand, and that's one of the greatest reasons that we appealed this, just the denial of our fishery and the absolute destruction that this project, if it hopefully never, but if it ever starts, there's no if about it. This salt, brine, into this river system will kill the river. The river will die. We
got a letter back responding to each point that we brought up in our appeal, and some reasons were given for why those grounds were not accepted. I found that the responses were quite short and didn't show me that a huge amount of research or effort had been put into really addressing the concerns that we raised. And in that way, it was a bit underwhelming to read that rejection. It didn't feel like they gave due process to really reading all 6 appeals, and I know many other people feel the same way.
The 6 appeals that were put in cover a whole gamut of all the concerns that a whole lot of people have, not just natives. A lot of the appeals are from people like myself, right, the fishermen, the Council of Canadian, there's a list of them, right, but they really care for this river system as we do. Those appeals, if the government refuses to look at those appeals, it's negligence. Because when it happens, it's not if. When this happens, and they didn't do anything in regards to the questions and concerns that we put in, they are negligent.
Residents who live close to the storage cavern site are already feeling negative impacts from the project. Like other opponents of the project, they say that Alton Gas has shown a lack of consultation and consideration.
I first heard about Alton Gas in 2006-2007 when a young student came to my door and asked me for a well sample. And I questioned him and asked him what it was for, and he said, well, we're doing some work in the area and we just like to make sure that nothing happens to your well water. And what happened next was in 2014, all the neighbors were talking about the new road that was being put in, and we were concerned, but we thought it was because of Leadwich Lumber, and they were putting a road in so they could finish logging their land. It wasn't until after that we actually found out what was going on, and it was Alton Gas.
2014 is the first time that myself and my wife and the residents of Brentwood and surrounding area found out about the Alton Gas project. The first we've heard of it, or the first we've actually knew about it, was when they drove the access road 0.3 of a kilometer from our home and closer to our neighbors. Despite Alton Gas's numerous attempts to make people believe that they've done proper consultation with both community groups, residents, and local members that are affected by this project, there has been no consultation that's been done. At no point have they ever spoken to the affected members.
To date, I haven't been approached by Alton Gas as to any of my concerns that I have about the project. There was no consultation whatsoever.
There just hasn't been very much discussion or information made available to make people feel safe with this project in their backyard or perhaps under their home. Other natural gas storage caverns similar to this one, perhaps using different geology but similar in nature, have had a really high fail rate, and when they fail, really bad things happen. And so I know that people in the area are really concerned about, for example, what might happen if one of the caverns explodes. That question has not really been answered, and I think there's a lot of fear in the community because of that lack of information.
They fail because of valve problems, and they cave in. There's numerous problems, explosions, forest fire, like I'm completely surrounded by trees. If there was a forest fire, we don't know all the safety issues. We just know some of them.
Safety involves both the possibility of contaminated groundwater, the possibility of either a fire and or explosion due to release of natural gas, and also the hazardous waste that will be both stored on site and transported through our residential areas. Unlike the propane industry, which is highly regulated and inspected, natural gas cavern storage is not. How do you inspect a gas cavern that's a kilometer underground? My wife and I submitted an appeal against the Alton Gas project. It was denied, in our belief, basically because the government had decided long prior to us submitting them that they wanted this project to move forward. We believe that they were both remiss and negligent in the duty to properly assess the information that was supplied to them. During the initial first phase of the construction process, where the wells were drilled for the actual intended caverns, 3 of the wells were drilled and they ran 24/7, despite normal regulations of 6 in the morning till 7 at night. This company ran 24/7 without any respect for local residences. Cement trucks, gravel trucks, the drilling company itself never ended. So there was no break between constructions. The noise was never ending. The actual drilling itself caused vibrations throughout everybody's homes in the local area. People ended up with sleepless nights and with no end in sight. This company is proposed for the first 3 holes. They're permitted for 3 holes, but there's an intention of 18 holes, which is probably 5 to 10 years worth of construction. So when they say that it's a limited time that it affects people, this is not actually the case.
Once the road was put in, they started running heavy equipment 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for months. And for months, it wasn't a pleasant place to be. There was no place that you could go without the sound of the machinery running or the vibration that you could feel from the drills that were drilling the holes down for the caverns. All day, all night. Yeah, 24/7, 7 days a week. And the only time that they stopped was for a break for 15 minutes or maybe half an hour for lunch. It was like a humming noise. You could hear it. If you were sitting in the house, you could hear it. It was like a hum. Like it was a constant noise. And then you could hear, of course, the backup, the beep, beep, beep sound every time they backed up to dump or load or whatever. It was just constant. And I mean, the house would shake.
People that don't understand call us NIMBYs, which means not in my backyard. I would invite anyone who wants to come and spend a beautiful, quiet, peaceful afternoon to sit up here and enjoy our backyard. Then I would like them to come back on a day when Alton Gas, which is right through there, is drilling, having construction going on, having the trucks coming back and forth, and they'll see the difference. And then they'll understand that it's not because it's in my backyard, it's because it has destroyed my way of life.
One of our secondary concerns is property values. People out here have invested their entire life savings into their homes. And a simple way to put it is that I've asked probably 100 of my own customers, would you buy next to a natural gas storage site? And 99% said no, they would not. And the 1% that said they would basically said that if the price was right, then yes, they would. That's the same result.
We built this house in 2011, and if I'd known what was going to happen to the land behind me here, I would never have built this house. The house now is worthless because of where it's situated. I know I don't want to live beside 18 gas caverns, and I can't imagine anybody else wanting to live here either.
The opposition and protest that has grown out of this shows me two things. One, people obviously do not want the Alton Gas project to go forward. And two, that if we had consulted the right people the right way the first time around, we could have probably come to a much better agreement about what is an appropriate use for our natural resources. And so this shows me that people really want to be consulted and want to be part of the decision making about what we do with Nova Scotia's resources and what our future is like. And I think this is a really strong indication that we need to fix our consultation processes so that people can participate in the decisions that affect their communities.
The approval process appears to be broken. Even though approval has been given to Alton Gas, this was not in light of a lot of the new information that has come out since that approval process began. That needs to be changed. There needs to be more interaction. There needs to be a collective of information, and there needs to be extreme scrutiny of that information by independent parties.
We're satisfied that Alton Gas has cherry-picked the scientific information that's available to their advantage, and have disregarded the information that would question whether they should be doing this or not.
Our treaties are very strong. Every chief that's we've ever had in the past has always upheld and fought to keep our treaty rights strong, and we totally will never give up our treaty rights. They're something they're good forever and ever.
So we're doing everything we can possibly do. We put our appeal in, it's been rejected. We don't know whether we have the resources to take it further. We're looking for that. But if you listen to what I said, this is from my heart. This is what we observe here as fishermen. The risk is absolutely right there. It's not if, it's when. This is going to destroy this river.
Given the uncertainty surrounding the Alton Gas pumping of brine into this ecosystem, this project should not go ahead, bottom line. If it does go ahead, there needs to be a substantial increase in monitoring of fish populations of more than just striped bass. Tom cod, for example, would be an excellent species to monitor. There needs to be monitoring of the invertebrates. There needs to be an open dialogue and open access to the information that is being found from monitoring, and there needs to be far field effects monitoring of salinity, not just around where the salinity will be released, but downstream in other areas.
It's just unfathomable that they'd even ever consider something this stupid. I can't help it. I mean, I get emotional because it just boggles my mind how much they, do they sleep at night? These politicians?
I guess if the Lord wanted more salt in the river, he probably would have put it back there when he made the earth.
When I look out in the morning, all I can see is beautiful trees and birds singing, and it just, I don't know how the government could let this happen to me and take away the peaceful living that I have.
As of early August 2016, Alton Gas was continuing with construction work, but has delayed the start of the brining process until a First Nations appeal to the Supreme Court of Nova Scotia has been heard. The battle is far from over.